Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bound to Talk Football. I'm your host, Blake Walker, along with Paul Arridge. Paul was back this week. Paul beat strep throat.
Oh, yeah.
Who catches strep in September? What's wrong with you?
Hey, that's flu season. I want to diss on too much.
I got COVID in August, so I guess that works. But shout out Ian for coming in and helping me. Paul, we got a stacked episode today. We got graphics today. I went the extra length, and I know people just hated seeing our faces way too up close. So I was like, we're going to have some graphics to fill the screen today. We'll get those in a second. What did you do last Friday? Did you watch? What were you up to?
I was on top of the high school scene. I was watching all the CI games and then sprinkling and like some of the other low class games. It was a pretty hectic week of high school football. There's tons of overtime games, tons of huge ones. I mean, Southeast Polk Ankeny was like a big one that really wasn't that big. Like it felt like wasn't big of a deal compared to obviously Valley versus Dowling. But we'll dive into those soon here. So
yeah, we'll kind of do what Ian and I did last week. We'll talk about most of what happened or what's going to happen this week, but in doing so, we will refer back to last week quite a bit. I was calling Waukee and Northwest. That was a crazy game. That game is not on our graphic. Neither of those teams are going to be on our graphic because Waukee plays Sioux City North, and then Waukee Northwest plays Roosevelt on Thursday. And we're recording this Wednesday, the 11th, September 11th, so this will go out tonight. Quick thoughts, Paul. I just want your thoughts on Waukee and Waukee Northwest. It was a great environment. Like I got chills several times in big moments in that game. I get Beckett Baker's run was probably the ceiling run, but Grant Gamble's run was unbelievable. I mean, up the middle. Northwest, though, proved that, and this proves no matter what, no matter how good either team is, the rivalry is still going to be so dang competitive.
Yep. Waukee Northwest, a little young. They obviously lost Maverick, too. That was a tough one. And then he obviously went off for Waukee this past game. Matt Heitland looked great. I thought that's a big game for him to kind of come out and be good. And then Isaiah Oliver was good as well. So, I mean, Waukee Northwest seems like they'll be kind of the same team they've always been, just that team that is good, sticks around, but just their schedule is always going to be so tough. So,
I'm not afraid to say it. I think Beckett Baker is the best quarterback in 5A.
I'd probably agree. I'd agree.
That's what I'm going with. His improvement is unbelievable. His ability to run, threw out of a sack to a touchdown. Like that was probably his biggest, most insane play. I mean, he has so many good throws. Knock on wood, is yet to make a mistake this year. So, I mean, he is something. I know it's a bold claim, but boy, stats even say that he is statistically one of the best in 5A, if not the best.
Yeah, he just their receiving core got exactly what we said. We need the receiving core to be up to par, and getting Maverick was obviously huge. He leads the state in receiving yards. But I mean, 31 for 41 on the year with that rushing attack he can have too is crazy, 75%. And I mean, his threat on the run is huge, and then he's been airing it out really well this year.
And that's one thing that got me week 1 against Ames. He only ran the ball once. So going into Northwest, I'm like, all right, so they've kind of transitioned the offense. So he's just going to pass heavy. And then they decide QB dive all the time, and Northwest couldn't get it figured out. So,
and he's only a junior.
He's only a junior.
And the rest of the team, Mavericks obviously is seniors, so that's a big deal. But the rest of them are all juniors. So
yeah, keep an eye on Waukee. They got ranked number 2 in the Iowa Radio Iowa poll. If you're number 1 in the Radio Iowa poll in Class 5A, that's not good. The first 2 weeks, the number 1 team is lost. Ankeny week 1 and Valley week 2. You can say whatever you want about Ankeny being week number 1, but we'll get to Dowling here in a second. And that's a perfect segue into our 5A games of the week. Wow, we got graphics. How about that? If you're listening on audio only, make sure to tune in on our YouTube channel because we got graphics now. They're not crazy, but our game of the week graphics is pretty nice. But threw these together to kind of help us out just a little bit more. I'm going to quickly get that set. There we go. All right, Paul. So our first game that we're going to talk about, Dowling Catholic will take on Ankeny. Ankeny is 0-2 to start the season. Not the ideal start for the Hawks. Dowling Catholic is 2-0. This is a game that I think a lot of people circled at the beginning of the year as being like, all right, here we go. This is going to be a big, big game. Not saying it isn't a big game, but is Ankeny on a valley trend here this year where they might have to recover halfway through? I mean, it's not a great start for the Hawks.
Yeah, I mean, they're figuring out losing Devin Akers was huge for them. He was a big part of their offense last year, and they're just trying to figure it out. I know it's tough because they return a lot on the offensive side, so you kind of ideally would probably want to be 1-1. That's the ideal here because that's what they were last year, and they were fine in the RPI. But I think we are kind of going to see a similar team to Valley than last year. This is a tough one. Their first 3 weeks, I mean, Centennial, Southeast Polk, and then Dowling. That's brutal. They play Valley week 8. And then they play at Johnston coming up. It's a tough, and they've also got Iowa City Liberty. So I'd say they look good. I'd say right away they probably have the toughest schedule in the state as of now. Obviously, Valley and Dowling and Southeast Polk, they all play, and Waukee Northwest even all play that gauntlet that they had assigned 2 years ago. But it's been a tough schedule and tough start for Ankeny.
Yeah, Dowling, Parker DePhillips, I think, is just doing what he needs to do. I think a lot of people were kind of questioning, all right, what kind of quarterback are we going to see this year? I think Parker has filled in well. Rashad Davis has not played, so it's been Ian Middleton's team. Ian got the big win over Valley, obviously winning it in overtime versus the Tigers. That was a back-and-forth game. But, yeah, for Ankeny, Luke Anderson has 2 touchdown passes through 2 weeks. I don't think a lot of people thought that was really what was going to be happening for him. We're going to give our picks for these games. So I'm going to roll with Dowling. I think Ankeny is it's just a weird year, I think, for the Hawks. But I think Dowling has tape on loop of that playoff game last year that they lost to Ankeny. The one that talking to the coaching staff, they know they shouldn't have lost. So I give the Maroons an advantage in this one.
Yep. Dowling's been really good this year. Their defense has been awesome, and their passing game is very intermediate passing. Parker missed some deep balls that he wishes he probably had back against Valley that I noticed, but I mean their receiving core just looks solid route running, and they get open, so I think that'll be fine. I'm gonna go with Dowling here. I think there is a little bit of a letdown or sneak game because that Valley game was a big emotional win. But I think they end up taking care of it mainly on the defensive side of ball and end up winning probably like 28-10, 28-14, something like that.
Last year's score 35-14 in the regular season between those two. Lynmar 2-0 will take on Cedar Rapids Kennedy 0-2. Paul, what's going on with our Cougars, man? They are struggling here. I mean, they lost to Dowling, was theirs the overtime battle against Pleasant Valley, or was that
no, that was Bettendorf first.
That was Bettendorf. Kennedy lost 35-20 to Pleasant Valley. The Cougars struggling here to start, but they get a Lynmar team that statistically they are better than. Lynmar has picked up 2 wins this year, obviously to start against Dubuque Senior and Cedar Rapids Washington, only giving up 20 total points. I think that's Kennedy's problem. Their defense is just not what it needs to be to help out their offense.
Yeah, I mean, they did play the number 1 team in the state week 1, so I was kind of giving them a pass here, but this Pleasant Valley one you would have really liked to see a win.
Now they're good. They are good.
They're good. It's been a slow start to Vinny Gianforte, just one touchdown and 3 interceptions, but they're just kind of slow to start. Their rushing game, 5.5 yards a carry, isn't bad. It just feels like the defense has been kind of not as good as a Kennedy defense has been recently, which is fine. They can pick it up. They kind of did that last year. They had a slowish start and then ended up being a dangerous playoff team. This Lynmar team returned practically everyone from last year, and they're 2-0. They have a nice schedule where they get to start off kind of with Dubuque Senior and Cedar Rapids Washington, who they preseason-wise at least should have taken care of, and they did. So we'll see for this game. I'm kind of leaning Lynmar. I feel like Kennedy's a little gutted right now. Lynmar's kind of been circling this game, I bet, waiting for it these first 2 weeks. So that's going to be my pick.
I like Tyree. What's up?
first win since 2014 for Lynmar in this matchup.
Jeez. Tyree Allens has been a dog on defense for Lynmar. 9 tackles, 3.5 for loss, and 2.5 sacks this year. Boy, keep an eye out on the D tackle, number 33. This is a tough game. I put this up here because I knew this is going to be one of those that is like a toss-up, really, because you say history, Kennedy, but I'm with you. I just think Kennedy has just struggled here to start, and the defense just has not gotten things rolling. Lynmar's offense seems to be clicking. Dylan Muzinski, 7 touchdowns already this season, 263 yards rushing. Their quarterback does just enough. Yeah, I'll take Lynmar in this one. 1-1 Valley taking on 1-1 Johnston. This is at Valley Stadium, technically the quote-unquote third straight home game for the Valley Tigers. This is the game of somebody's got to wake up and who responds off a loss better. Valley coming off the loss to Dowling Catholic. Johnston falls to Cedar Falls in a thriller. 2 very good teams, might I add. I mean, they 2 very good teams. Valley beat Southeast Polk in week 1. Johnston beat Waukee Northwest. Paul, what do you think? We see points or we see defense?
I think we see a defensive game. Just I feel like these 2 teams' defense have been good, and that overtime win 37-34. It's more like it was like 21-21 that entire game. Then overtime kind of took over the scoring. And then Valley's defense has showed up this year. I think they're good defense. They're sound in the run game, and they're physical, and they play pretty good coverage. So I'd say we're going to see more of a defensive matchup, but I really do think Valley comes out kind of sore in this one just because of that loss. I think they need to. It's very promising. We've seen how many times, Blake, where a team loses to a rival early in the season, then gets them again in the Dome. And those teams usually take care of business, and Valley needs to do this week. Drake DeGroot's been great. He's been great at just scrambling around for broken plays. The run game for Valley needs to step up. 3.1 yards a carry, and that is not going to cut it. I think Jakari Clark is the guy. He averaged 5 yards a carry against Dowling. I just think they need to get this going. 166 yards in 2 games is not going to cut it in the CIML. You got to be able to run the ball. You have Zay, so it's tempting to just want to air it out, but I don't think that's their goal. I know that Swenson's goal is to be able to run the rock. So,
this is interesting. I think statistically Johnston beats Valley. I mean, if you just look at the box score and you don't look at team, everything else, Johnston is better statistically. They run the ball better. Passing wise, Will Nuss does not have the same receivers that he's had. Tino Day has been phenomenal. There's no doubt about that. I lean Valley, but not by much. I mean, I think Johnston could easily win this game for sure, but I'm going to lean Valley just a slight edge for the Tigers. What was the score last year of this one? This was Johnston won last year. Yeah, Johnston won last year. So, I mean, and you look at it, it's a little bit different Johnston team, kind of the same Valley team. So, stats say this will be a great game. I'll roll with Valley as well. Iowa City Liberty at 2-0, taking on Pleasant Valley of 1-1. Liberty has been on fire. I mean, these guys can score. Their last 2 games, 56 points against Iowa City West, 49 points against Iowa City High. They gave up 45 against West, and they gave up 20 to Iowa City High. Pleasant Valley coming off a win against Kennedy, 35-20 after the overtime loss to Bentendorf, 25-24. Pleasant Valley won this thing in a shootout last year, 56-39. What do we think of Liberty? Are they legit?
It's hard to be a team when they just score every single possession. That's what it's felt like for Iowa City Liberty. Granted, the 2 defenses they play, we aren't sure how they'll rank at the end of the season, and this is probably one of their better tests. Pleasant Valley usually just turns out a good defense. They haven't been like anything crazy this year, but they usually turn out something that's pretty good on the defensive side of the ball. It is at Pleasant Valley, so that's a tough place to play, and Pleasant Valley and Liberty play 2 very contrasting styles of football. Yeah. Pleasant Valley, obviously more of a running football team that controls the rock, doesn't want to have turnovers, play good defense. Iowa City Liberty right now is just airing it out. Reese Reddig has been probably statistically one of the best quarterbacks, probably top 2 If we're going pure stats, Beckett obviously number one. But Liberty also can run the ball, 545 yards rushing with 6 yards of carry. We'll have to see. This one's gonna be interesting. I lean Liberty. I think they're hot, but this is gonna be I think this is a close one. It's kind of a prove it a little bit because Pleasant Valley has been kind of that team out east that can just win it every year. It feels like they always are the top 2 or top 1 team out east.
Yeah. Did you see the video of Van Wetzinga running over that Kennedy guy?
I did not.
I think either he scored a touchdown or something, or maybe it was a block, but he just ran over somebody. The Van Wetzinga's name has been synonymous with Pleasant Valley. That kid is massive. Yeah. I like Liberty. I think they outshoot Pleasant Valley here. I think it's going to be another shootout. I mean, and that's probably what Pleasant Valley doesn't want to be a part of again. But, yeah, expect another in the 40s type of score. Give me the Lightning. I would see the Liberty's going to be tough. And, they play Ankeny later in the year. I mean, it's not an easy district by any means, but, yeah, I gotta roll with the Lightning there. That's going to be a good one. Paul, that brings us to our 5A game of the week. Cedar Falls takes on Ankeny Centennial. Both teams are 2-0. They have had some really good football games the last couple seasons. Ankeny Centennial coming off a win against Ames and Ankeny. Cedar Falls defeated Prairie and Johnston. I'd say Cedar Falls overall has the better wins, if you will. But as you can see on our graphic here, if you're watching along, here's how both these two teams stack up. Statistically, Centennial is the better team. But there's something to be said about a Cedar Falls team that can be very, very tricky here when it comes to the postseason. But they're really looking hot early, which we haven't seen.
Yep. Cedar Falls has always been that team that kind of can stick with the CIML and play close or even beat teams. That Centennial and Cedar Falls have ran into each other, I feel like, an insane amount of times recently. They ran into each other twice in 2022, once in the playoffs and one in the regular season. And obviously last year, Centennial whopped them at home. This is a really tough game. This is two teams that like to run the ball. They don't really lean on their quarterback that much. And we have two of the best backs in the state.
Yes, we do.
Some of the best backs in the state going at it. Braden Jackson and Devarion Clark. And Cedar Falls' offensive line and Centennial's offensive line is really good. It's like they're just playing each other. It seems like the two same teams are playing each other. I like
Cedar Falls.
Yep, I like Centennial here. And I like them because I have a little more confidence in Chase Kluver to make big throws than Leighton Wolf. And I think Braden Jackson and Devarion Clark just kind of cancel each other out. I think the defenses are both good. This point spread would be like 1.5 on this. This is a really close game. I've just leaned Centennial because I think it's their year. They beat Ankeny 31-10, who then goes to Southeast Polk and only loses by 8. So I think that win is a pretty big one. And the Johnston one's big for Cedar Falls, but I think if we compare wins, I'm going to go Centennial.
I like it. I'm going to roll with Centennial as well. I think it'll be a great game. I think Cedar Falls really puts people on notice if they haven't already. It's in Cedar Falls, which place looks lit. I mean, it looks so cool. Their locker room comes out in the middle of the stadium. Like it's crazy. It's so cool. But I'm going to roll with the Jags. I think the Jags passing offense, while it not being so much better, they can at least pass the ball a little bit more efficiently. And I think running attack wise, I think I like the Jags just a slight bit better. But this is, like you said, this is a battle of two of the best backs in the state. Give me the Jags to roll to 3 now.
And another note, they just played Johnston in overtime on the road. That's a tough, kind of emotional win. And then they got to turn around and play a lot of people would say it's probably a top 3 team in the state, top 4 team in the state. So
it's going to be a fun one. Those are your 5A games. I like that graphic. I'm going to keep this. I think this is a nice little representation there. All right, Paul, let's go to 4A. 2-0 ADM. Didn't think we'd be saying that after how much they lost this year. We'll take on 2-0 Lewis Central. Paul, this game has been fireworks. I should say, yeah, they've played most, but Lewis Central has, quote-unquote, dominated this series as of late. ADM hasn't won since 2012, if Bound is being correct with us. ADM is 2-0 with some very tight competition. Beat Newton 13-8, took care of Winterset 31-9. Lewis Central has taken care of Harlan and Creston, two teams that are not the same as they were last year. So, I mean, it's in Lewis Central. Brady Hetzel, 446 yards, 5 touchdowns this year. ADM is playing ADM style of ball. They're not running the ball as much this year, but what do you think? Can the new look Tigers take down the Titans?
I think Lewis Central this year is just really good up front, and I think Brady Hetzel kind of takes them past ADM here. But I think ADM, they've been good to start. The Winterset win was nice and big, and then Newton was a really big win week 1. I think this is just not their game. It's on the road. ADM, for me right now, I just want to see them make the playoffs, and this is just a tough ask because it's the number 1 team in the
tough schedule.
Yeah, and they play at Norwalk next and against Boone, who's 2-0, and Ballard and Indianola. Bunch of good teams there. So
That's a tough schedule.
It's a tough schedule. And Lewis Central right now is averaging 10 TFLs a game. So I'm just gonna have to go with Lewis Central here, but hopefully they prove me wrong, make it a good one.
Yeah, I do too. I think experience wins in this one. I think Lewis Central takes care of business, and that's not a fun drive, ADL or Adele all the way over to the Council Bluffs area. I mean, that's not a fun drive. It's a pretty boring drive. So it's a true road game, if you will, for ADM. Xavier 2-0 will take on Western Dubuque at 1-1. Western Dubuque fell to Wahlert Catholic. Golden Eagles are not on our agenda this week because I'm pretty sure their opponent is pretty laid back. They should take care of business, but we'll circle Wahlert Catholic in a while. And then Xavier, bound equals clowns, goes out and defeats Williamsburg, which caught me off guard because I thought this Xavier team is young. They have a sophomore quarterback, a junior tailback, a junior wide receiver leading the way. Are they dangerous? I'm kind of confused because Xavier's usually senior-led heavy, and now they're young and they're still good.
Yep, that's scary for the rest of the state, that's for sure. They are a team that just does what Xavier does. They haven't been good at running the ball this year, only 3 yards a carry. They've been led by a Cash Parks, a sophomore, who's been able to pass the ball at a high level for them, and their defense has been really good to start the year, only giving up 7 to Waverly Shellrock, and then did enough against Williamsburg. I know 27 is not necessarily
a good Williamsburg team.
Yeah, that is a good Williamsburg team. Fraze Heitman, who's one of the best athletes in the state. I think it's just Xavier. They went up front. They just know how to win games. I think they're never going to go away. And now, especially that they're young, these next years are going to be terrifying. I'm going to go with Xavier here to get into Western Dubuque and get this one.
Their quote-unquote dynasty has faltered just a tad in the last couple seasons. And clearly Coach Schulte and his staff has taken that personally. Yeah, I got to run with Xavier. I think Tanner Anderson he's going to have to pick things up here in the passing game. Drew Bird still does not have a rushing touchdown, but he's doing a really good job on the defensive end. Bo Morio for Xavier is only a sophomore, and he is leading the team in tackles. I mean, this is a Xavier team. It's not really fair with what they're doing right now. So, yeah, I'll roll with you with the Saints. Webster City at 1-1, taking on North Polk at 2-0. This was a great game last year. I think it was like 23-21. Webster City took the win. Webster City went against Fort Dodge, fell to Spencer 24-14. North Polk beat Bondurant, that insane 35-7 rally at halftime, and then took care of Carlisle 41-27. Webster City won last year's game 21-20. What do you think, Paul? There is no Jackson Cherry this year, but they have a Jackson Griffith. Webster City did replace Jackson with Jackson, so that's nice. They don't really pass the ball, and really neither does North Polk. You're going to see a lot of running in this game.
Yeah, Nathan Feldman's off to a terrific start to the year. He's got 7 touchdowns, I think, on the ground as a quarterback. He's been great to start the year. The big thing here is they don't have Jackson Cherry. And last year, if you remember, he had like 200 yards and 3 touchdowns to beat North Polk, and like a comeback win too. They were down initially. So I think this year it's a tough ask for Webster City to go get it done. They did just beat Spencer 24-14, but I'm leaning here Webster City. Now, this team still runs the ball at a high rate. They're averaging 5.5 yards per carry, but North Polk averaging 8 yards a carry, and I feel like the competition they've been playing has been a little bit better. So give me the North Polk Comets.
Yeah, I'm going to roll with North Polk. Nathan Felderman, though, 3 picks this year. Still has yet to throw a touchdown. But when he's running well, that's what you expect. Webster City has picked off teams twice this year. North Polk has picked off teams 4 times. Give me the Comets. It is a home game. Newton and Norwalk, 2 1-1 teams that high hopes to start the season. And then after 2 weeks, you're like, well, we could be 2-0, but they're not quite. Newton gets a good win over Dallas Center Grimes. Like that was a good win against a pretty good Dallas Center Grimes team. Norwalk comes up short against Indianola. This one will be interesting. Newton is run by Caden Klein, who is really good at both. I mean, he can pass the ball well, 322 passing yards and 253 rushing yards. So, I mean, Caden Klein, he's doing a really nice job. Eli Robbins is a one-man wrecking crew for Norwalk.
Yeah, he's been great. I haven't really seen in a long time someone leading in rushing yards and receiving yards for a team. We've known he's been a great athlete there, and he's going to need some big one. It looks like this year he's going to have a pretty phenomenal season for Norwalk to stay on the radar, because that Indianola loss was tough. That was a game we kind of thought was going to be a closer nail-biter, and it got away from them. Defensively, we want to probably see Norwalk be Norwalk here. We need them to step up against Newton, who can run the ball at a pretty high clip. But I think here I'm going to go with Norwalk to bounce back. It's a series that's been kind of dominated by Norwalk. I don't know if our bound is have they really only played once since 2013? I feel like they're in the same.
It's possible. I mean, I could definitely see it. Just because they're in the same conference doesn't mean they don't play each other.
Oh, yeah, I forgot it's districts in
yep.
in football. So I'm going to go with Norwalk here to get the win, but this is a really good game. It's going to be tight.
I think Norwalk's a little bit bigger up front, and I think that's what will make the big difference. I don't think there are going to be many points in this game, personally. I think this will be another slug. I mean, just like 17-13, 13-10, something like that. Give me Norwalk. I think Norwalk hits the ground running. Our 4A game of the week. Buckle up. This will be a good one. Indianola at 2-0 will take on the Pella Dutch at 2-0. Indianola cruises against Norwalk. That was a big one. Pella has taken care of business against Ballard, and then they beat Keokuk last week. Take a look at the stats. Pretty even in the passing attack, rushing attack. Pella's just a little bit better. Indianola's only given up 10 points in the last 2 games, or in the 2 games to start the year. Pella up to 15. Boy, this is a tough one, man. I think Pella has been very impressive. Indianola really flexed their muscles last week in a game that I think a lot of people thought was going to be closer. Asher Bruick leads the attack for the Indians on offense on the passing side. Jake Pontier running the ball well. And then Colin Kurnt, 294 yards, 3 touchdowns, but he also runs the ball well. So you have to cover for Pella. You have to cover Kurnt at the passing attack, who can also run. And then Emmanuel Dyers, a junior, has also run for 234 yards. So it's a double-edged sword when you're playing Pella.
Yep, for sure. I'd agree. This is kind of 2 really good programs that have been good. Pella's been a little bit better recently, but Indianola's still been a pretty decent program. And I think that I'm going to go with Indianola here. I think their wins are really impressive. They beat Urbandale, who's a 5A school, who didn't really just they're a decent school. They barely lost to Iowa City West. They're not a school that just gets ran over as one of the poor 5A schools. I'd say that they're in the Norwalk win we've talked about a lot. So I'm going to go Indianola here. I think just their defense, how they've been playing, and how Asher Brook and Jake Pontier has been playing, I got to go with them.
It's Coach McKinstry's last year coaching for the Pella Dutch. I think they're going to go all out for him. I think Pella has a good chance to make a deep run in the playoffs, and it starts with another statement win. Already got a big win against Ballard in week 1. I'm going to go with the Dutch to take down the Indians here in week 3, because I think they've circled this game. I truly do think they've circled this game since last year, a 30-21 loss to the Indians. Give me Pella up front. I think the Dutch get the victory. Alrighty, we'll go to Class 3A. This is where we kind of get to the 4A or the 3A playing 2A. 2A will play 1A. So some of these games will kind of be on and off, but we'll roll through them as such. Nevada taking on PCM. This is one of our honorable mentions, so we are choosing this game. It'll be on our graphic on Friday. Paul, Nevada has started the year 2-0, looking good. PCM, as we expected, has one of the best running backs in the state with Adrian Robbins. They can pass the ball pretty well. Connor King at the quarterback position for Nevada is prone to mistakes. A couple interceptions this year. Anthony Eaton has been eaten at the running back position, 386 yards and 8 touchdowns. Statistically, this lines up pretty close between a really good 3A team and arguably one of the best 2A teams.
Yeah, this will be a really good one. It's a tough one to predict. I know last year Nevada got away from PCM, but this is one of the best running attacks in the state with PCM. Adrian Robbins has been dominant this year. They're averaging 8 yards to carry. And Trenner Van Dyke on the defensive side, he's got 19 tackles, 8 TFLs, and 4 sacks in 2 games. That is pretty ridiculous numbers for him. So I'm going to lean PCM here. At the beginning of the season, I would have leaned Nevada, but just recently.
The 2014 win against Roland Story kind of threw me aside a little bit. And Connor King was really good last year, but he had really good weapons last year. And this year he's just made a couple mistakes. 4 interceptions, still looking for that first touchdown. I think PCM's hitting on all cylinders. I think the Mustangs take this one.
Yep, I agree.
There you go. Roll with it. Waukon at 1-1 taking on Independence. Remember when Waukon made it to state a couple years ago? Didn't they win state a couple years ago? I mean, Waukon, they're trying to get back on the up and up. Taking on Independence. Independence is 2-0. This is a home game for the Mustangs. EJ Miller is playing well this year. 569 yards passing, 7 touchdowns. They don't really run the ball a ton. As for Waukon, it's all Jackson Brinkman, the senior. 34 carries, 149 yards, 2 touchdowns, 184 in the air, no touchdowns. And our boy Tate Wood, who I think finished with 130-some tackles last year. He was like one of the biggest tackle leaders. He's tearing it up. 22.5 tackles on defense. Not to mention for Independence, Brady Kurt, a sophomore, 304 yards receiving already.
Yep, Independence has been on fire to start the year. EJ Miller just tearing it up. But the scary part for me is against Crestwood. They allowed a runner to have 285 yards and 3 touchdowns on them. And we know that Waukon is going to be running the ball. They have 67 rushing attempts to 36 passing attempts. Not particularly insane numbers on the ground. It's 4.5 yards to carry. I believe they had a big rushing game against MFL Marmac and kind of ran into a buzzsaw in Decorah week 1. So this will be a tough one to predict just because it's we'll have to see how Independence's run game is. I'm going to go with Independence. I think they're hot, and I think they're EJ Miller and will lead them to a win. And Tate Wood's been really good. I think this will be kind of a big tackle game for him because it's going to get a lot of opportunities.
Since 2008, Independence has not beaten Waukon. They are 5-0 against the Mustangs. That will change Friday night. I think I'm with you. I think Independence has this one circled. Take it, run with it, win it. I think Independence defeats Waukon and moves to 3-0 on the year. Tipton 2-0, a lower class, taking on 1-1 Mount Pleasant. If you remember, Paul, I think our Tipton Tigers went 4-0 to start the year. And I don't think they won a game the rest of the year. Unfortunately, they ended up missing the playoffs. But is this year any different? Aiden Boston, he's a dog. 193 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 138 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns. He goes against a team that also likes to run the ball. And how about Peyton Walker? 23.5 tackles, 2.5 for loss, 1 fumble recovery, 1 interception. He is a dog on Mount Pleasant's defense.
Yep, he's been tearing it up, but I'm going to lean with Tipton here. I think they're able to get it done against Mount Pleasant, mainly just because they've started out hot. They got it done last year pretty dominantly, and I don't think this Mount Pleasant team is particularly that much better than it was last year. They also have been really good Mount Pleasant has struggled to run the ball this year, 3.3 yards to carry, and that's the problem when that's the main thing they do on offense. It's not passing the ball. So I'm going to lean Tipton here.
Also just have not passed the ball well at all. 5 of 23 for 59 yards. Tipton's a little bit better in both categories. I know obviously the schedule isn't the toughest, but Tipton has scored 70 and 53 points in their first 2 games. Mount Pleasant has scored 12 and 10. So I'm going to have to roll with Tipton here. Oskaloosa takes on Grinnell. The Tigers trying to turn some heads here to start the year. They are in a very tough district. Williamsburg and Solon make up the district. Benton, who is 2-0. We'll talk about Benton here in a second. Oskaloosa 1-1 on the season, picked up the win over Des Moines. Hoover. Grinnell goes on the road, trails 14-0 early, and rallies to defeat Bondurant 17-14 through injuries and all. This is a series that is very, very aggressive. These two teams do not like each other so much that Grinnell dropped 80 on Oski's head a couple years ago because Grinnell got mad. Oski ran up the score the year before, so Grinnell ran up the score on them. That's when Wyatt Hunter ran for like 490 yards in one game.
Oh, that was that game.
That was that game. Brady Kaufman has been insane for Grinnell. He's been phenomenal both on the defensive side of the ball and on the offensive side of the ball, passing well. AJ Walker, Oskaloosa's tailback, 219 yards, 3 touchdowns already this year. This is a young Oskaloosa team that was pretty much all sophomores and juniors. Now they're kind of growing up a little bit. I got to roll with my Grinnell Tigers, Paul, but I'm telling you, they missed the playoffs by like 0.1 RPI last year to Fort Madison. They're going to have to beat either Benton, Williamsburg, or Solon, I think, to really keep the hopes alive. But I like the start for my Grinnell Tigers here.
Yeah, I actually also am going to take the Tigers in this one. I think they get it done. That Bondurant win is huge. Sucks for Bondurant.
Yeah, that's a 4A win.
Yeah, and I feel bad for Bondurant. It's mainly because they blown both 2 games. They definitely think they should be 2-0.
Yeah.
They're going to be a dangerous team to play that some top team is going to have to play because
they get Waverly Shell Rock this week. 0-2 Waverly Shell Rock versus 0-2 Bondurant, and easily could be 2-0 Bondurant versus.
Yeah, that's a tough one. But yeah, I lean Grinnell here. I think they've been kind of the better team recently. But that's who I'm going to go with.
There you go. Go Tigers. Our 3A game of the week. This is going to be a fun one. Benton at 2-0 will take on Mount Vernon, also at 2-0. Kellen Haverback, 409 yards passing this year. You can see the stats. Benton does not pass the ball a ton, but when they do, it's efficient. They run the ball insanely well. 620 rushing yards to Mount Vernon's 255. Benton has given up 6.5 points in 2 games. Mount Vernon has given up 6 points in 2 games. Benton has defeated Marion and Vinton Shellsburg, and Mount Vernon has defeated Monticello and Union Community. The last 3 times these two teams have played, the winning team has not scored more than 25 points. Paul, I think we are in for a defensive slugfest. 1st to 10 wins.
Yeah, honestly might be how it goes. Ready for this stat?
Yeah,
Mount Vernon's allowed 5 rushing yards this year.
What?
Games. Against Union Community, they held them to negative 35 rushing yards in the first game. They gave up 40 yards rushing, which is really, that's just plain out ridiculous. Now, I wouldn't say that means their run defense is the top and insane because played Union Community and Monticello. And Benton obviously is a way better at running the ball than either of those teams. But I think that does tell at least some part of the story that that Mount Vernon does have a capable run defense, because usually a team can scrape by with 100 yards and still get blown out. To have only 2.5 rushing yards allowed per game right now is ridiculous. So I like Mount Vernon. This is I really actually like it. This is a 50-50 for me. I'm going to go with Mount Vernon, but it doesn't feel right because every time I go with the team that I like that passes the ball, it doesn't go well.
You and I are struggling to start picks this year. We are both 7-8. It's because we think about the games too much. Meanwhile, Ellie's over here who's 14-1 because she just looks at the team and is like, yeah, I'll go with that one.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the Bobcats. I think Benton wins this game. I think the rushing attack is good. Mount Vernon, the first 2 weeks, has kind of cruised when it's come to this. And this has been a very competitive game in the past. I think senior leadership kind of helps the Bobcats out here. Shout out Jackson Anderson of Mount Vernon, 12.5 tackles and 3 sacks this year already. And he's only a sophomore. This will be very low scoring. This will be so low scoring. But I'm going to roll with the Bobcats. I think Benton gets it done, but barely. I mean, I'm literally talking 10-7 is what I think this game will be. Watch it turn out to be a earth-shattering high-scoring affair, but this will be a fun one between the Bobcats and the Mustangs. 2A games. Let's roll. Couple underrated, undefeated teams. 2-0 Jessup will go and take on Hudson, who is 2-0 to start the season. This is in Hudson. Take a look at statistics here. Pretty even all across the board. Preston Youngblood, 285 yards, 4 touchdowns on the ground for the Jayhawks of Jessup. Keenan Kryl, 36 carries, 243 yards, 3 touchdowns. Both quarterbacks seem to pass the ball well. Boy, you talk about even. This game looks even.
Yeah, it's a really tough game to even predict. Last year, obviously, I don't know if you mentioned it, 22-21.
22-21.
Yeah. They both run the ball at a really high clip, and it's just a tough pick because you're kind of just shooting in the dark with these teams, I feel like.
2 very good defenses, too.
Yeah, Wapsie Valley's a pretty solid win, I'd say. So I'd probably lean Jessup, but this is going to be a kind of a nail biter.
Oh my goodness. Every stat is really even across the board. Give me Hudson. Barely. Give me Hudson. I think Hudson takes it. They're going to have to score a little bit more, but they've only given up 3.5 points so far this season, combined 2 games. So give me the Pirates in that one. 2-0 Emmitsburg taking on 2-0 Sheldon. Emmitsburg got that big win that kind of turned heads with the win over Central Lyon. Sheldon this season with wins over Sibley, Ocheyedan, and South O'Brien. Obviously, I think Emmitsburg has the better wins. Obviously, Central Lyon and a 34-0 win against Esterville Lincoln Central. Braden Yates, 153 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground so far for Emmitsburg. There's really nothing like too off the page for these two teams. Landon Seastra, 226 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 176 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground. Sheldon loves to run the ball, but history tells me I think Emmitsburg should take care of business here.
Yeah, I'd actually completely agree. I think that Emmitsburg is starting off hot. We are a little biased. We both picked this team, right? To go to the Dome.
Yeah. I need a little bit more offensively. But
yeah. It was a shot in the dark for us. My big stat that kind of concerns me is Sheldon hasn't logged or has 1 TFL this year and 0 sacks. This Emmitsburg team likes to run the ball, and you're going to need to be able to get pressure or disrupt the run game at least a little bit. So I'm going to go with Emmitsburg here. I think they get the win. I think they stay hot.
All right. 1-1 Kemper Catholic taking on 2-0 AHSTW. AHSTW continued to dominate Riverside in a 42-22 victory last week. Kemper Catholic, Paul, defeated. I can't find the game here on the Bound app.
They played Underwood.
Yeah, Underwood. Well, we need to talk about Underwood real quick. What's going on with Underwood? 0-2 to start the year.
Rough start. Garrett Lett just struggling a little bit to start the year, it seems like.
Going to be one of those kind of slower starts. Walk us through here, Ridgeview and Cherokee, Washington, Kemper Catholic and AHSTW. Kemper's good, man. I think this is going to be one of those games that don't look at the one loss, because Kemper's one loss is to Bishop Heelan, who I don't know if you've looked at their stats. They look really good this year. So I don't know. I think the Vikings are going to have a tough time here.
Yeah, I think the Kemper, Brock Batting looks good. And Jaron Hoffman, only a sophomore, he's got 164 yards on the ground. And Tate Beerett, he has 18 tackles and 4 TFLs already on the season. I like Kemper here. I think the opponents they've played has kind of geared them up for this game. They've played Underwood and they've played Bishop Heelan. We just talked about that. And those are 2 high caliber teams that we both, at least preseason wise, had really high expectations for. And last year, they were both really good teams. So I'm going to go with Kemper here, but AHSTW is start off hot with 2-0. So we'll have to see.
I picked against the Vikings last week. I am unfortunately going to pick against them again, but I promise if they win this week, I will not pick against the Vikings the rest of the season, but give me Kemper Catholic. 2-0 Ridgeview taking on 2-0 Cherokee Washington. Cherokee Washington was one of those teams, Paul, that you and I actually did circle at the beginning of the year as like one of those, hey, check out these 2 teams. Again, for the Bound app, I cannot for the life of me find this game. There it is. I found it. Ridgeview this year, not passing the ball. really not running the ball. How is this team 2-0? Oh, they've scored 16 points and 10 points in their first two games. Cherokee has scored 37 and 31. All right, well, I got my pick.
And you want to know how one of those touchdowns were scored?
How was one of those?
Fumble return for a touchdown. So
they only have one touchdown this
year. They've been pure defense. They've gotten 3 interceptions on the year and 2 fumble recoveries. How about Cherokee Washington? 6 interceptions already on the year too. So that's going to lead me to pick Cherokee Washington. If they're forcing turnovers in these games and then they play an offense that has scored 1 touchdown, it's pretty tough for me to pick the team that's been struggling. So they're young. I mean, Bryce Jensen at quarterback, so he's a sophomore.
Jackson Paulsrud has run for 308 yards and 5 touchdowns, and then they also have a running back, quote-unquote tight end, as it's listed. Blake Lovell, 311 yards and 4 touchdowns, both of which are only juniors. Keep an eye on this Cherokee team this year and next year. Give me the Braves. Van Meter taking on Humboldt. A 2A versus 3A match is our 2A game of the week. The Bulldogs are 2-0. I talked to Drew Gordon on our staff, who is one of the assistant coaches. I'm like, how are you 2-0? And he said, I don't really know. So things are still, kind of up in the air for Van Meter. That's for sure. And then on the other end of it for Humboldt, they are 2-0 to start with wins over Ballard 21-18 and Spencer 27-10. Cohen Matson, who I swear has been there forever, is leading the charge, both in the passing attack and on the ground. Keegan Grote has 312 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. Paul, nothing jumps off the page for Van Meter, for me at least. So this is interesting, but the defense is very good.
Yeah, my big thing so far is Van Meter's defensively has just been really good. They played great against Underwood, and they blanked Des Moines Christian. They forced 2 turnovers per game. They've got 3 interceptions and 1 fumble recovery. I'm going to go with Van Meter here. Obviously, last year they dominated Humboldt, and I think, it was a different team. But I think this year, I think they really haven't missed a beat. I think we're seeing a similar thing with kind of Xavier, where they just are good, and they're going to be good. So I'm going to go with Van Meter here. But I think it's a close one because Humboldt has looked really good to start the year, and Ballard is a pretty big win. So,
I can't pick against Van Meter. I can't do it. I'll go the Bulldogs, but I think it'll be a really, really close game, and I would not be surprised in the slightest if Humboldt's able to give away. Our 1A games, Pleasantville at 1-1, taking on Lynville Sully at 2-0. Lynville Sully has jumped off to another good start after another impressive season. They've won both their games 30-22, so there's your stat of the day. I'm pretty sure they're the only team to win back-to-back weeks with the same exact score. They beat Danville and North Mahaska. Pleasantville fell to I-35 27-14, but then beat Woodward Granger, who beat Madrid in week 1. I will say, I don't think – who's the guy from Madrid? Preston Wicker? Is that
Preston
who it is?
Wicker.
I don't think he's been playing. You're going to have to check that. But statistically, I don't think he's been playing because at least the last time I checked, he has not shown up on stats. So you're going to have to check that for me so that way I don't sound like an idiot. But yeah, Lynville Sully won this game last year 36-27. Landon Montgomery leads the way for Lynville Sully, 466 yards, 4 touchdowns. Jack Bowling, 252 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns. Braylon Bingham is a quarterback/running back hybrid along with Braden Kennedy. Braylon Bingham is leading the team in interceptions, tackles, passing yards, and rushing yards. And then Braden Kennedy, their wide receiver, is also a sophomore. So they are pretty young. This is a young game between these two teams. Do you have any update on Madrid for me so I don't sound like an idiot?
Preston Wicker was out week 1, and then he played this last week.
Okay. So there we go.
So it kind of looks like Woodward Granger dodged a bullet.
Who you got, Lynville Sully or Pleasantville? Lynville Sully cannot run the ball. 24 carries for 69 yards for Gavin Fisk.
It's a tough one. Pleasantville in every sport is insanely young. I noticed it right away in baseball because they had like 7 freshmen or 6 sophomores.
Big class coming.
Yeah, and Braylon Bingham has been
Everywhere.
ridiculous. Ridiculous. That Woodward Granger game probably equates to one of the best games almost of all time. 3 interceptions, like 400 total yards, and 6 touchdowns, something like that.
Oh, you were the one we posted about, correct?
Yeah. So he, that's a huge name. Both teams really can't run the ball. It's going to be kind of a passing contest. I'm going to go with Pleasantville here. I think last year this was a close matchup, but Lynville solely lost a insane amount of athletes from last year. Was this the game that Quarter Nounhunter got hurt? I can't remember because I remember he was hurt by this point, and Landon Montgomery went off. So we'll have to see how this game goes.
Man, I pick against Lynville Sully so much, and I have nothing against Lynville Sully. Just stats are always against them. They have 4 picks this year already thrown, and Pleasantville has got 4 interceptions. Now, granted, Lynville Sully has also picked off the ball 6 times in 2 games. Give me Pleasantville. I think Pleasantville gets away. Yeah, that's what I'm going to roll with. Manson NW Webster at 2-0 taking on MVAOCOU. Say that 3 times fast. The Cougars and the Rams. Luther Cameron is leading the way for the Rams in the rushing category. 40 carries, 358 yards, 7 touchdowns. Both teams do not pass the ball well. Camden Berkeley, 38 carries, 273 yards, 3 touchdowns so far for him. Manson MW Webster has beaten Ogden and a really good win against Southeast Valley. Southeast Valley is a pretty good team. And MVAOCOU has defeated Westwood and Missouri Valley. I think this was a 37-30 game last year. I like Manson NW Webster's wins just a tad more.
That Southeast Valley one's a big one. We haven't really seen MVAOCOU play really like a spectacular team yet. They've blown out kind of both teams. I'm going to go with the Rams. We'll shorten it there. I think they get it done, but both these teams run the ball at a pretty high clip at 7 yards a carry for the Rams and 6.5 yards a carry for the Cougars. So I'm going to go with the Rams, but this is going to be a tight one. It seems like they both play similar styles.
I'm going to go
wow. Found a big stat. The Rams have forced 8 turnovers already. They have 5 interceptions and 3 fumble recoveries. So I'm gonna stick with that pick.
I'm gonna roll with it. Manson MW Webster. I like their wins just a little bit more. Beckman Catholic at 2-0 taking on Alburnett at 1-1. Beckman Catholic has defeated Columbus Catholic, who made it to the Dome last year, 57-14, and then they beat Monticello 21-0. Alburnett lost to Northland 6-12, and then beat Comanche 34-7. Holy cow, Alburnett is young. They have a sophomore quarterback, sophomore wide receiver / running back, and then a sophomore leading them in the tackle category. Beckman Catholic, Dylan Recker, and Isaac Burlage lead the way on offense, both in the passing and rushing category, and Zach Wolfakul, the junior linebacker, 10.5 tackles, 1 sack this year. I'm going to roll with experience in this one. But good for Alburnett because circle this team. We'll come back to him in a couple years.
Yeah, Lakin Caves has been phenomenal, but I just think it's kind of a big task for a bunch of underclassmen to handle. A private school that is usually pretty good and has already played some decent teams. So I'm gonna go with Beckman Catholic as well. I think Dylan Recker and the crew get it done.
Central Lee and Durant. Central Lee is 2-0 on the young season. The Hawks off to a good start. Durant, if you remember, had a pretty good running back, I think 1 or 2 years ago, if I remember correctly. The Wildcats come in at 1-1. Central Lee won this game 17-10 last year. They beat Durant beat Columbus Catholic 12-7, lost to Lisbon 30-0. Central Lee beat Van Buren County 13-8, and then Cardinal 47-0. I expect a low-scoring game. Caden Calfee, a senior quarterback, he kind of has to do it all. He's a guy who has not passed the ball well, 3 of 9, 41 yards, but 2 touchdowns, so they're very efficient in that category. He's run for 143 yards and 3 touchdowns. Meanwhile, on Durant's side, Cannon Davis, a freshman quarterback, 15 of 23, 210 yards and a touchdown. They also have a running back. They also have a wide receiver, Colby Gast. Give me Durant in this one. I think a little more well-rounded here. I always like when a team doesn't have to depend on one guy, because one guy, if he gets hurt or has trouble, then you're kind of in trouble. So give me Durant.
Gotcha. I'm gonna go with Central Lee here. I think their defense has been forcing turnovers at early clip, and they're playing a freshman quarterback. I think they might be able to get to them there, and they're on the road, right? Yeah, Durant's on the road. So I'm going to go with them, but I kind of agree it's scary because if Caden gets hurt, it's going to be like who replaces him. So,
yeah, it's going to be one of those. Yeah, one of those kind of games. Our 1A game of the week, West Lyon will head to OAB-CIG to take on the Falcons. Bryson Kohler versus Bryson Childress. I hope you don't like running, because I think we're going to see a lot of passing in this game. West Lyon, as you can see, a lot more even. They like to run the ball well, and they pass the ball well. No difference there. OAB-CIG loves to take to the air. Bryson Kohler, 305 passing yards already this season. Do I have something wrong on my end? No. Bryson Kohler just has 630 passing yards for Bryson Kohler, 6 touchdowns. He can also run the ball. Bryson Childress can run the ball and pass the ball just as well. Defense, though, Paul, I have circled for West Lyon in this one.
Yeah, West Lyon, for me, I think Bryson Childress has just been really, really good to start the year. He had a phenomenal game last game. They run the ball barely, a little bit better than OAB-CIG. But I'm going to go with West Lyon in this one. I think they get it done. It's going to be a good one. I just think OAB-CIG is just not there yet.
Yes.
I know statistically they kind of whooped them, but I think it's just West Lyon. They're really good defensively, and I think that's going to be a big one.
Not to mention, there has not been a lot of roster turnover from last year, and West Lyon won this game 49-0 last year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like West Lyon in that one. All right, let's go Class A. North Lynn at 2-0, taking on Starmont at 2-0. Here is your wild fact of the day. Don't let this sway you, Paul, at all. Starmont has not scored in this game since 2017.
A lot of years.
Don't let it sway you. Don't let it sway you.
I'll try not to. That's a tough stat to kind of disregard there.
So hang on. Let's go over the 2 wins here. Yeah, so these 2 teams have played a long time. They have played each other almost every single year, dating back to the Bound database back in 2008. Starmont has not won this game since 2013. They have not scored since 2017 when they lost 34-6. North Lynn beat Alburnett 12-6. Postville 54-6. Starmont beat South Winneshiek 15-14. Clayton Ridge they won 53-6. North Lynn is led by Drew Rees and Will Sommerfelt, and it looks like Avery Vasky and Nick Wilfong are the leaders for Starmont. History says I got to go with North Lynn.
I'm going to go with North Lynn. I don't think it's as bad as it's been recently. I think they narrowed the gap a little bit, but I just think North Lynn is a little bit better defensively, and they've been dominant in this. And I think Alburnett's a pretty good win to have on your resume. I don't think Alburnett's no slouch. So I'm going to go with North Lynn to get it done for the how many times in a row? 9th time in a row?
Something like that. I do think they score. I think Starmont scores.
Yes.
That streak will be broken. I am going to go out on a limb and say that's what's going to happen. 2-0, IKM Manning will head to Earlham to take on the 1-1 Cardinals. I feel like Earlham's underachieving just a little bit already this year. Shout out Caleb Smith, 304 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns, plus 22 tackles already on the defensive side of the ball. Blake Reynolds passing the ball 151 yards, 2 touchdowns. Ben Langell, 265 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns this year for IKM Manning. Earlham won this game last year 40-33. IKM Manning 20-0 win against Panorama and a 49-34 win against East Sac County. Earlham just fell short to ACGC 28-21, 41-12 win over Central Decatur. I got to roll with the Cardinals because they looked decent last week against a very talented ACGC team.
Yep, I'm also going to roll with Earlham here. I think Caleb Smith and Blake Reynolds are two really good players, and I think they get it done. And I think that ACGC win motivates them a little bit, and they also come back home. So that's a big one.
Gotta like it.
Mm-hmm.
Pekin 2-0, taking on Danville 1-1. Danville was one of my dome picks. We're not gonna talk about it. Danville has struggled to start the season. Lost to Lynville solely 30-22, and then beat Highland 14-7. Pekin has not given up a point this year. They have won against Cardinals 76-0 and Van Buren County 54-0. They run wild. Nolan Glick, a junior, 221 yards, 7 touchdowns. Will Adams, man, he can throw it. 19 of 23, 389 yards, 4 touchdowns, 206 yards on the ground, and 3 touchdowns. Jaden Bauer has been good, but Paul, we've talked about it so many times. If you're a one-man show who passes and runs the ball, it's really tough, and I got to go with Pekin to get this one done.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Pekin as well. I think that Will Adams just too good of a player, and it's tough for me to sway from the last year matchup. I don't think that we're seeing Danville get that much better. Now that Lynville Sully game, that's a close one. And that's a pretty good team we're starting to see. But 10 yards a clip for Pekin on the ground. They've gotten 2 kind of games where I'm assuming preseason they felt like they were going to win, and now they can kind of play Danville, a team that they know will put up a pretty decent fight. But I think Pekin gets away with it.
South Central Calhoun 2-0, taking on Riverside. Lost last week to IHSAA. The Bulldogs beat West Monona week 1, 68-0. South Central Calhoun has beaten Pocahontas area and Southwest Valley 35-12 and then 43-6. Andrew Anderson, 332 yards passing, 88 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns total. Jackson Gordon, 336 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground for Riverside. I love South Central Calhoun's defense here. I mean, they've only given up 18 points in 2 weeks. I know, it kind of depends on who you're playing, but I think the Titans can hang on here despite the very, very talented rushing attack of Riverside.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go with Riverside here. That rushing attack kind of does it for me at 8 yards a carry, and I think they've played the better teams. I think IHSTW is a pretty quality team, and they still moved the ball at a decent clip against them. It wasn't like they got absolutely pummeled defensively. They were actually in it the entire game, just kind of fourth quarter. IHSTW scored 16 points to get away from them. So I'm gonna go with Riverside in this one.
Our Class A game of the week: West Hancock versus St. Ansgar. These have been 2 of the top teams in the state in this class for quite some time. We can see statistically how both these teams like to play. 83 passing yards for West Hancock, 165 for St. Ansgar. As you can see, West Hancock has run the ball really well, 748 yards, 524 for St. Ansgar. I circled points allowed. I think that's something to really focus on. St. Ansgar beat North Union and Osage, beat Osage 28-14, then beat North Union 48-7. West Hancock snuck past Garner Hayfield Ventura 22-20, and then beat Bellman Clemmy 59-23. St. Ansgar upset West Hancock last year, if you remember, Paul. I don't think this is going to be an upset this time around. I think St. Ansgar takes it because I believe they are the better team.
Yep, I'm going to agree with you there. I think St. Ansgar gets it done. I think they're a little bit like I think they
all around
can pass it if they need to. Not that they probably will. It's just they are able to use that as a threat way more than West Hancock. And I think West Hancock is just a little bit less talented than they were in years before. So I'm going to go with St. Ansgar to get it done.
It's going to be a good game. It always has been a good game. St. Ansgar won it 24-15 last year.
Mm-hmm.
All right, one more class. 8-player Winfield Mount Union at 2-0 is taking on Waco at 2-1. Waco played one of those week 0 games, so that's what puts Waco at 3-game margin, if you will. Jake Edwards, he's still balling. You remember him from last year, obviously alongside a very talented offense with Cam Buffington. And then on the other side for Waco, boy, they can throw the ball. Clayton Miller, 704 passing yards, 13 touchdowns. Waco is a passing offense and then evenly distributed on the rushing attack. Now, granted, stats are a little skewed because Waco has played 3 games and Winfield Mount Union has played 2. But I still like Waco just a little bit because of what the offense can do.
Mm-hmm. I like that pick. I'm gonna stick with that. I think this year Waco's just kind of got the edge. I think last year it was that was the team to beat last year. If you remember, Winfield Mount Union for most of the year was considered the best team in the state. Obviously, Bishop Garrigan ended up winning it all, but I think most people considered this team the best team in the state. So I'm gonna have to go with them. They still got Cooper Buffington and Jake Edwards though, so it should be a really good one. I think this is a very tight 8-man matchup.
Looks like Winfield Mount Union doesn't kick a lot of 2-point conversions. Defense is a liability in this game. I think you're going to see the score in the 50s. Winfield Mount Union has given up 28 and 32 points. Waco has given up 36, 46, and 56 already this year. So, Waco lost to Iowa Valley last week. Iowa Valley's not really on our radar this week, but boy, Iowa Valley looks good.
Yeah, they do.
We'll get to them later on down the line, but I think a pretty easy win this week. Remsen St. Mary's at 2-0, taking on West Bend Mallard. West Bend Mallard falls to Bishop Garrigan last week. Remsen took care of business last year, 34-18 in this game. Remsen has defeated Harris Lake Park and Siouxland Christian, and they've only given up 12 total points in 2 games. I don't care who you are. Giving up only 12 points in 2 weeks, an 8-player. I don't see how you don't roll with Remsen St. Mary's in this game. Now, granted, Cole Fair, 330 yards, 7 touchdowns. Austin Schmidt runs the ball well. Lyndon Grimm, 19 tackles, 3 sacks already this year. The thing is with Remsen St. Mary's, they really don't do a ton statistically on offense. That's like mind-blowing. I think they just do everything well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Remsen St. Mary's there. I think they're kind of just the team this year, too. So we're going to probably pick them every week until they lose one if they do. Here's my thought process is West Bend Mallard played Bishop Garrigan week 1. They lost 41-6. And I think that Remsen St. Mary's is a team that's on the level of Bishop Garrigan. And that's the main reason I'm going to have to go Remsen St. Mary's in this one.
There you go. 1-1 Glidden Ralston, another one of my dome picks. Taking on Colonesco, who has also played 3 games this year. Colonesco passing the ball, able to run the ball. Colby Wallace is a one-man wrecking crew. He is the passer and he is the rusher. And then Alex Daniel on the receiving end and on the defensive end. Statistically, Colonesco is just much better. I get they played 3 games, but 650 rushing yards, 7.5 rushing yards per carry. You just look at sacks. They have 7, 12.5 total tackles for loss. Colonesco's, what is their lone loss this year? They lost to Audubon, 44-8. Beat Twin Cedars and Murray without giving up a score, and then Glidden Ralston lost to Woodbine, but got a good win over Arweva. Glidden Ralston won this game by 4 last year, but I think the Royals squeak one out this year.
I'm going to go Glidden Ralston. I think this is a really kind of tough game to predict, and it was a close one last year. I'm chalking up that Woodbine win to just Woodbine being really good. I think Woodbine this year is kind of a wrecking crew. They've blown out, I think, Boyer Valley and Glidden Ralston this year. So this is going to be a close one. Colonesco is a quality team as well. The stats are just hard because they have 3 games.
Yep.
It's hard to compare. I mean, you can compare the averages, but I'm going to stick with the Wildcats here. But this is a good one.
1-2 Central City taking on 2-0 Edward Colesburg. You may be thinking to yourself, why in the world did you put a 1-2 team up there? Well, look at Central Lions' schedule. They lost to Waco 51-36. They lost to Winfield Mount Union 40-28. I'd say that's respectable against those 2 teams. And then they beat Springville, who is a pretty good team, 44-14. On the other side, Edward Colesburg defeats Central Elkader 66-6. They also beat one of my dome picks, Easton Valley 76-34. Shout out Price Rockford out of Edgewood Colesburg. Has not missed a pass this year. He's 8 of 8, 172 yards and 5 touchdowns, 434 yards on the ground and 8 touchdowns. Paul, I got to go with experience, though. And I think Central City gets this thing done.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Edgewood. This is a very close game.
Matthew Klosterman has run for 512 yards this year.
Matthew Klosterman has been ridiculous, and Price Rochford last game, I think, had like an 8-touchdown or 7-touchdown game, if I'm not wrong. So 2 really good athletes going at it. Probably going to be high scoring, I assume, with this with this matchup. I know it's 8-man, but I think it'll be high scoring even for 8-man. But should be a good one. Edgewood Closberg on the ground right now is averaging 10 yards a carry. Granted, they haven't really played as well competition as Central City.
Yeah. I think it'll be a good one. It'll be a fun one. Going to be a fun 8-player game of the week. Bedford and Lennox. Both teams are 2-0. Look at that stat. 356 passing yards for Lennox and 1 passing touchdown. 10 yards for Bedford in 2 weeks. And they have thrown 3 passes. And their 1 completion was a touchdown. On the ground, 581 yards. 460 for Lennox. Rushing touchdowns, 13 for Bedford, 7 for Lennox. The two teams playing so far, Bedford won this game 36-24 and then 41-30. They played twice. Very close games. Bedford has not given up a point this season, 60-0, 58-0. And then Lennox beat Stanton 50-18 and smoked Fremont Mills 41-0. Gabe Funk, been there forever. He's on your graphic now. He's unbelievable. Garrison Mortsinger literally does it all for Bedford. I think Lennox is better all around, and the Tigers are going to beat Bedford on Friday night.
I'm actually going to agree with you here. I think Lennox gets it done. Sorry if you thought that was a bold take.
I don't think I think we're the same on almost all of our picks, except I picked Pella. So I'll try to take a lead over you.
We picked some multiple in these lower classes. Higher classes, we were kind of the exact same. Yeah. I like Lennox here. I think the big thing for me is they've been good against the run against the teams they've played. And that's kind of a big thing in 8-man. And we know Bedford is only going to run the ball. They have games where they week 1, they didn't pass the ball once.
And at the Dome, they didn't pass the ball.
Yeah. Gabe Funk is a great athlete for Lennox, and I think they get it done. It's going to be 2 contrasting styles, though.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. I'm excited to see how everybody else's picks do. We made it. That is all 7 classes. It's going to be rough when they add another class. But it's inevitable. It's kind of one of them things. It's going to be a fun night. It's going to be a fun Friday night. I know you'll be back doing that. I am calling Northwest and Roosevelt tomorrow night. The last time I said Roosevelt would lose to a team that was statistically not as good as them, I got beat up for it. I'm just kidding. But Waterloo West was that was a tough one last year. But I will say, I think Roosevelt will put up a fighting chance against Northwest. That's all I'm going to say. I will say it is frustrating because I'm trying to prep for the game, and Roosevelt does still not have their stats in from Ottumwa. So let's figure that out, please. Because Eddie Fulton had a great game in week 1. But what I saw from Northwest, especially against Waukee, I think Northwest should take care of business. And then on Friday, I'm at Valley and Johnston. So it's going to be a fun week. Make sure to tune in all across. I know Jack will be back live. He's getting crazy on some of the streams. I saw he had those classes on last week. I think he goes crazy when it does that for 4 hours. But Paul will be uploading scores. We need to do that. We need to figure out what scores we're posting this week. So Paul and I
got it up.
All right, there we go. Paul's got it figured out. We appreciate everyone for listening. As always, Paul and I love doing this. I can't speak for Paul, but it's a lot of fun. I think we're gonna bring back questions next week, or some form. I think we're gonna do questions again. I think those are really fun. If you submit questions, we're going to put an Instagram post out for it. Don't just ask the normal, like, who's winning this week? Like this team or this team, or the standard. What do you think of blank? Or who do you think of blank? We're not going to answer those questions. Give us like the good questions. That'll make us think. I think we might do that next week, a special questions episode. So that'll do it for us. Hope you guys enjoyed the graphics. We're going to try to keep it a thing. I think it really added a lot. You didn't see much of Paul and I. We were off to the side. We didn't take up all your screen. I'm sure a lot of people really enjoyed that. Enjoy your Friday night football. We'll be back next week. He's Paul. We will say so long. Enjoy week 3, and we'll see you guys next week.